Story 1. My family owns a modest house across the state line. Since I often have a lot of vacation time from my job, I make an effort to visit frequently. I enjoy leisurely travel, so I don't mind the extra day or two it takes to get there. I make it a point to stay at one hotel or motel along the way whenever possible. When I do, I simply check in, go to bed, and resume traveling as soon as I can. The main reason for this is that the areas along the highway are often in the middle of nowhere, barren, and dilapidated. Since I'm not used to being in such places, I find it difficult to feel safe. I made the same annual road trip to my folks' place for the holidays last year. With a few breaks for coffee and lunch, I drove for over 20 hours non-stop in the early hours of the morning. By then, it was 11 o'clock at night, and I was worn out and having trouble staying awake while driving. I could only go so far. I was less than 8 hours away. Since I was in the middle of nowhere, I intended to stay wherever the next available spot might be. I turned off into a little village around 20 minutes later. It was really just a petrol station and a motel, but that was all I needed. After pulling into the largely deserted parking lot, I went to the front desk. An older woman greeted me and struck up a conversation. After getting a room, I made my way back to my car to park nearer the entrance. I just went inside, leaving all of my belongings in the car because I was so tired. I hurried inside and jumped into the shower, eager to prepare for bed as quickly as possible, and I did not give a damn about the room. I heard a couple of tapping sounds while I took a brief 5-minute shower. However, it sounded as though they were coming from outside, perhaps a tree branch thumping the structure. I got out of bed without thinking about it, put on my cozy clothing, and went to bed. In the end, I grabbed the lamp and turned out the light after setting an alarm on my phone to prevent me from sleeping in too late. I was so exhausted that it didn't seem to matter that the motel was an old, dilapidated one in the middle of nowhere. I fell asleep without any problems. Even so, I didn't sleep for very long. A movement in the shadows around the bed startled me awake. I sat up and looked toward the front door, but my field of vision was quite narrow. I was too fearful of what I might see to move and seek the light. Not too long after, I heard something outside the window on the opposite side of the bed. I was totally awake at this point, with my heart pounding and my hands beginning to perspire. I turned around fast and flicked on the light again. Nothing in the empty room seemed out of place until I noticed the cracked closet door. My mind was racing with everything, attempting to make sense of every scenario. I decided to call out, "Hello," but got no answer. Sensing that I could have just scared myself, I stood up and moved cautiously in the direction of the closet. I was perplexed when I opened the closet door farther. As I opened the closet further, I noticed a big bag stuck between the door and the closet's back, falling to the floor. Glancing around, one could see that there was a large pile of bags, clothing, appliances, and luggage that obviously belonged to someone. You wouldn't anticipate discovering such items at a motel. As I was examining everything, I heard footsteps hurrying away, and the window beside my bed smashed shut. I froze and shivered, then used the moment to rush outside to my car and get my phone off the nightstand. I looked up and made eye contact with a man standing at the room's door almost immediately after I got inside and started the automobile. After giving me a quick glance, he dashed inside, took a big suitcase out of the closet, and ran out the back of the building. In fear for my life, I ran to the main office and told the woman what happened. She confined us both in the office until the police arrived and immediately called them. We learned a bewildering amount of information over several weeks, but I will attempt to describe what we discovered next. The suitcases that were left in the closet were found to belong to multiple people who had been robbed at various motels in the vicinity throughout the previous month. The man was probably utilizing the room I was in as a makeshift hiding place for the stuff, and he was entering the space through an unlocked window. Nevertheless, the police believe there is a connection between the crimes because one of those bags belonged to a young woman who was reported missing a few weeks earlier. However, the police discovered the man's reported stolen bag within that closet, indicating that he hurried inside to retrieve an unaccounted for bag. They repeatedly questioned me to confirm that I had indeed seen him leave with another bag. They also wanted to know the size of the bag and other details. My insatiable curiosity has prevented me from forgetting what he was going to do that night when he was outside the window while I was asleep. It's even more unsettling because I knew it was closed when I went to bed, so he had to have unlocked it while I was asleep. I also wonder what was in that one bag he had to grab before fleeing, and why it was so crucial.
Story 2. I rarely travel or stay in hotels, but last year, a problem with my small house necessitated my absence for several days. The circumstances forced me to reserve a nearby hotel and stay there until further notice. Although I didn't like it, I had nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. In an attempt to save as much money as possible, I searched for the most affordable hotel in the vicinity. The one I chose was half as expensive as the ones closer, but it was 25 minutes away. I knew it was because the hotel was in a less desirable neighborhood, but the money we saved more than atoned. That was before my arrival. At least from the outside, the facility looked terrible. There was trash everywhere, and it was obvious that the structure needed maintenance. I was a little perplexed because the only rooms in the internet photographs were those in the lobby, but they still seemed tidy and pleasant. After removing my small luggage from my back seat, I went inside. I was relieved as soon as I walked in. Despite its small size, the lobby was tidy and well kept. When I got to the counter to check in, no one was there. For a minute I waited patiently and observed the main room. There was utter silence, and not a soul was in sight. I figured people would be out and about in the lobby or strolling around, given that it was just 4 p.m. I walked a little more inside the hotel and peered down the main corridor that led to the rooms. At the very end, a man was standing just outside a room door. After observing him for a short time, it became clear that he was simply facing the door and not moving at all. I retreated to the front counter out of discomfort. At last, a man emerged from the street and moved behind the counter. In all honesty, he appeared lifeless. After requesting my name and handing me the keycard, he turned to go. I quickly glanced at the card and saw the room number marked in the corner. I knew it was on the first floor because of the small number. My stomach lurched a little when I realized that the rooms were located down the hallway where I'd seen that man. I moved over to the hallway I was just in and looked at the directions. Worse, as I descended, I discovered exactly where the man was standing, at the end of the hallway. He was so far away when I saw him that I couldn't tell if he was outside my precise room or not, but it was still unsettling. Hotel thin walls annoyed me, even though I hadn't been to many, because you could hear every room's noise. As I walked down the hall, I noticed an oddity. Not a single sound emanated from any room. There were no TVs on, no one speaking, no movement, nothing. I felt shivers down my spine, but I scanned the card quickly and went inside. The accommodation was actually in excellent shape considering its age. It was obviously outdated and cramped, but it was exactly what I expected for such an inexpensive accommodation. After setting my suitcase on the floor and checking that everything was okay in the restroom, I locked the door and sat down on the couch. It should come as no surprise that the TV died, and all I had left was my phone. I had been trying to keep myself busy for an hour when there was a knock on the door. The fact that there was only one knock, and it sounded more like a hit, surprised me. Since there was no peephole in the door, I cautiously turned the safety latch to the other side and slightly opened it when I arrived. The same man from before stood in the hallway, just a foot or two from the door. Through the gap in the door, we met eyes. "Hi, did you need something?" I stopped, hoping for him to clarify, but he merely stood there as if he were waiting for me to say something. "Yeah," I said. I was evidently displeased with him, so I inquired, "Okay, man, what do you require?" In response, the odd man said he was the last person to stay in my room, and that he had unintentionally left something significant inside one of the drawers. As I started to close the door and turn around, the man pushed it back and slammed it against the safety latch. I said okay and promised to grab it quickly. I felt terrible about this, so I glanced back at him as my heart began to race. The man whispered to me, "It's in the top dresser drawer," then retreated and let the door close. I pivoted and proceeded towards the dresser, pulling open the upper drawer. Actually, there was a little box inside that had its lid taped shut. When I picked it up, though, it felt empty and was really light. After turning around, I went back to the door and opened it to see the man still standing there. "Is this what you were looking for?" I responded. The man extended his hand and nodded. When I tried to get the box through the door gap, it was just barely too big. Despite my obvious foolishness, I attempted to fit the box into every possible position, but it was slightly too wide on all sides. The man appeared impatient, and even though I wasn't sure I trusted this place yet, I believed the man when he said he had left something behind, and I had seen him waiting by the door before, so I decided it would be okay to open the door for a brief while in order to give him the box. I turned the latch to the other side, and the man smashed his body into the door, knocking me down and grabbing a revolver. I backed up into the living room, and he yelled at me to stand against the wall. His shouting was so loud that I was genuinely taken aback, as I assumed he would frighten everyone in the building. He took hold of my entire bag and pointed the rifle at me while he looked around. As he was going to depart, he approached me, positioned the pistol a few inches away from my face, and gave me a direct look. I was trembling with panic as I looked into this man's enraged eyes, but he quickly turned around and fled with my belongings. I stared at the ground while I stood there for what felt like a full minute. It happened so quickly that it hardly seemed genuine. When I eventually composed myself, I left my room and headed straight to the front desk. There was no one else in sight, and the person standing there was kind of like he didn't hear anything. In summary, nothing was accomplished. He got away with all of my belongings, and to be honest, no one in a position of authority that I spoke with seemed at all alarmed or taken aback. They kind of gave me the impression that I didn't really belong here. It seems typical that they anticipate you taking care of yourself. However, the box was in fact empty, and it was clear that the entire situation was only an intriguing scheme to defraud hotel guests. But what I can't stop thinking about are those final seconds before the man fled. The hatred in his eyes, the way he held the gun up as if he were prepared to shoot without second thought. Why didn't he? All I could think was that he might have known that, if it was just a heist, no one would search. I may be wrong, but I will never again stay at a budget hotel in a sketchy area.
Story 3. I was out on a professional trip when this occurred. We have the opportunity to win trips to our other 2 major offices, one of which is in Miami, where I work for an insurance company. My supervisor and a few other employees joined me on vacation after I won. We spent the majority of the trip working during the day, and at night we were free to do as we pleased, including visit the town's pubs and the hotel pool, among other things. I went out to a cool-looking bar on First Street with a coworker because it was the second night I was there, and I didn't have much to do the next day. We arrived at roughly 11 p.m. after taking an Uber. Miami is known as a party city with an incredible nightlife. I felt like I was back in college because the bar was so busy. Although I wasn't that old, I'd graduated from college a while ago. We received shots from my coworker, and we continued to get more throughout the evening. In the end, he bought shots for the 2 girls and invited them to the table. One of them clicked with him, and the other one seemed to like me. My career had taken over my life, and I had been single for some time, so I was truly delighted that someone was showing interest in me. Aside from that, we both mentioned we were on vacation, so neither of us was expecting anything significant to come out of this. Throughout the evening, I offered to buy her drinks because I thought she was incredibly nice and very attractive, but she also bought her own, which I thought was really cool. She asked if I wanted to return to her hotel, which was only a 15-minute walk from mine, at around 2 in the morning. I was frightened, to be honest, but I agreed. Even though I knew this girl was much beyond my league, I still chose to go for it and enjoy myself. We took an Uber back to her hotel, which was really lovely, and made our way to the room. I won't delve into the specifics, but a series of events unfolded, leading to a brief conversation. She was becoming fixated on her phone after a while, so I went to the toilet to freshen myself and put on some clothes. I was perplexed when I heard a key card open the room's door while I was inside. She never indicated that she was here with anyone else, and the room didn't appear to contain any other people's belongings. I heard a man's voice at that point. My gut fell with my heart. I threw on some clothes and made sure I had everything. My shoes were still outside, but I had my phone and money in my jeans pocket. I decided to leave them because I was unable to handle whatever the situation was at the time. He inquired about the presence of men's shoes near the bed, a question I heard him ask as I awaited my turn to leave. I realized then that I was in trouble. There was a pounding on the restroom door by the time I decided to dash for it. Since it was one of those doors that slid open rather than locked, it was just a matter of time before the cheap device exposed me. This man was enormous. If I had tried, I could not have been much unluckier. The worst part was that he was aiming a gun directly at me. In the calmest way possible, he urged me to gather my belongings and leave, which made everything 10 times more terrifying. With my heart pounding out of my chest, I took off my shoes and headed out. There was a pause before he shut the door behind me. It was strange that I didn't hear any fighting, yelling, or anything else, but I wasn't willing to remain to find out. I discovered that all of my cash had disappeared when I entered the elevator and reached for my wallet to retrieve my key card. They stole not just my debit card, but also my credit card and gift cards. I'm unsure of how I missed it, or when she had the opportunity to take everything. I attempted to remember returning to the pub and entering the room, but the evening had become indistinct. I was furious that I would have no money for the remainder of the trip and spent the next hour deactivating my cards. When I told my employer and co-workers the following day, everybody laughed and expressed sympathy. After some time has passed, I can still laugh at that experience, but one of my friend's theories that it might have been a setup has lingered with me. It's possible that it wasn't even her boyfriend. She could have driven me back to the hotel, removed my belongings, and before I realized the money was missing, she could have waited for the guy to scare me off by entering the restroom. If so, that would explain why the guy wasn't more irate, and why I didn't hear any fighting after I left. I make an effort not to give it too much thought, and the few times I do go out, I try to be cautious and choose wisely.
I really hope you like this tale. I am thrilled to share these stories with you. Share this video with others so that we can keep growing, and more stories can reach more people. Kindly provide your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. It will aid in my further development. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Many thanks, and I hope to see you again soon.